Okay, so I've gotten the high sign from the AV folks, so we are good to go whenever you are, Ms. Dalton.
Well, like the other two elected officials who've already been here in front of you, I just want to thank you for making it possible for us to come and talk about our departments, because as most of you know, I can talk your ear off when it comes to what my departments do. So I really appreciate the opportunity. And I really have to thank Tanya. This has been a huge change in how we do budget, and it is much for the better. And I'm really looking forward to next year to see how we do it then. And then just a word of warning, I've asked Tessa to show me at 15 minutes as I'm going through the slide to try and keep it short. So I'm Vicky Dalton. I'm the Spokane County Auditor. I have my managers here with me because we have 4 completely separate departments in the auditor's office, and most of them really don't have that much to do with each other. So we have elections, recording, financial services, and auto licensing. We'll get into those in just a minute. So their basic functions are to preserve records in recording and to make those records available to the public. We're financial management for Spokane County. Elections conducts all the elections held within the county, state, county, and local elections. And auto licensing, we are contracted to the state, and we'll go into that in a little more detail. So you can see that we have a variety of different responsibilities. We have elections and voter registration, accounts payable and payroll and financial services, mobile home titles. So we do a lot of different activities. So it can get a little frenetic some days with all the things going on. So I'm going to dive into each one of my departments, and feel free to ask questions as we go along, because it can get a little complicated. So the elections office does 2 major things: voter registration and then the actual balloting itself. And you can't have one without the other. So in elections, we maintain the voter rolls, and we perform all the elections that are residence-based. There are some elections that are ownership-based rather than residence-based, and we don't do those. But we do all the elections for federal, state, county, cities, and special districts. So that means whether it's the city of Spokane, or a fire district or a school district, some of the water districts, the county, the state, the feds, we do the elections. And we generally have 4 elections every year. I remember the bad old days of 6 elections every year, 4 in the spring, 2 in the fall. 4 elections is a lot more manageable. We also used to be poll site. Now we're vote by mail. Again, a lot more manageable and able to control the cost better too. So voter registration, that's where it all starts. We add people to the rolls. We take people off the rolls. We change their addresses. And we touch as many as 25% of the records every single year. And in some legislative districts, it can be a little bit higher or more labor intensive. So we have some districts where people move more frequently, and catching up to them can be a challenge. So we spend a lot of time working with the post office. As far as funding, the elections office really is supposed to be a self-sustaining operation. Many counties have moved elections into their own fund, and the county is billed as though it's nothing more than just another jurisdiction. So here we're in the general fund, and so I think what happens is sometimes the commissioners don't realize that you're paying for our service. We're not just another part of the general fund. You're actually paying us to perform that work. So everybody pays their proportionate share in elections, except for the state. We'll get to that in a minute. And the cities and the county pay their proportionate share of the voter registration costs. As you'll see in a minute, the elections office really does recover quite a bit of money, except from the state. So recording, and I realized I had ran out of space and had to go back and edit this and forgot to put in marriages. So in recording, we are charged with maintaining certain types of records for perpetuity and making those records available and accessible to the public. So unlike a lot of operations, when it comes to recording, we're not talking about next year. We're not talking about the end of my term. We're not talking the end of the century. We're talking the end of our civilization. that's the expectation, that those records that we're preserving right now will be available for 500, 1,000, however many years it is, until our civilization ends. And that is an awesome responsibility when you think about it. Because as you look around at the development that's going on right now, people purchasing homes, all of that is based on the very first records that were recorded for this area. And those records are part of my responsibility to maintain. So we do a variety of records: deeds, liens, mortgages, releases, maps, plats, surveys, power of attorneys, military discharge records, and that's just a few. And in this case, the funding is that our customers actually pay a fee. They pay $5 per document and $1 for every page thereafter in that document. And as you'll see, we generate revenue for the general fund, so we actually more than cover our cost of operation. In auto licensing, this one is a little bit odd because we're a contractor to the state. So unlike my other offices where I operate at my discretion, this one we operate based on what the state tells us to do. And sometimes that makes it very difficult for us to operate in a way that we think is efficient and effective. So we are forced to do what the state tells us to do. So in this case, we're responsible for vehicle and vessel registration and titling. We collect sales and excise taxes. We also do mobile home transactions, which if any of you have been through one of those, they can take days to get through. They're very difficult. And to get all this done, we have 9 subagents. These are private businesses contracted to us out in the community so that it's more convenient for our customers to go to. But we are the ones responsible for those offices. So we're responsible to monitor those offices, audit those offices, train their employees, review them, make sure they're performing up according to standards, and to deal with any of the disciplinary action if necessary. We're also responsible for their inventory, so we make sure that they get the inventory that they need. Right now, we are facing a challenge in licensing. The state replaced a 30-year-old computer system, which was in COBOL, by the way. They replaced it December 12th of 2016, and it's been a challenge. It doesn't yet perform at the level we'd like it to. So there are times when we have to spend a great amount of staff time trying to fix issues that have come up because of the system. And for this, our customers pay a fee. That fee varies. It can be $3 for a registration or $12 for a title. And we receive that fee based on every transaction, whether it's our office or the subagents. And as you'll see, it more than recovers the cost of operation. And in fact, recording and elections and licensing make up about 15% of the service fees for the entire county. So financial services. Financial services is responsible for the accounting and financial reporting of the county. We do the vendor payments, we do payroll, we verify compliance with certain regulations, and we do the annual financial report, which is required to be turned in by the end of May. And that's used by a lot of different groups. The public, the state auditor's office, our funding agencies, our grantors, the state legislature, and in fact that's why it's required to be in by the end of May, is for the state legislature, and of course our bonding agencies. And a significant portion of our operating costs are recovered through cost allocation, although we were not able to determine that exact dollar amount. And just so you know, cost allocation is something that Tanya and I have touched on very briefly, and will probably be something that becomes a topic of conversation throughout the rest of the year, because as Mike Voles in the Treasurer's Office alluded to, we have a variety of different ways that people are billed or charged, and that whole scheme needs to be looked at. But that'll be a discussion for another time. So our financial information, so this is the basic one that you're looking at from everybody, apparently. So as you'll see, our revenues always exceed our expenditures, and we expect no less in 2018. So if you lump my entire office together, we actually do pay for ourselves. And in that, just so you know, there is no credit given for cost allocation. So really and truly, the amount of revenue should be higher than what you see there. So what do we do as far as receipts? So in a year, we receipt in over $18 million. And where does that money go? $10 million of it goes to the state for housing and transportation. Just under $1 million is county dedicated. Most of that is housing. A little tiny bit of that, just under $300,000, goes to my Fund 103, which is what helps to keep my recording system running. Without that amount of money, nobody would be able to buy a house because we wouldn't be able to record your deed and deed of trust. So that is, in part, what keeps my office running, is something that's outside of the general fund, recording anyway. Other jurisdictions of 2.4, that goes for housing and juvenile, and then county general. So our contribution to the county general fund is $5 million plus. That's what you guys get to allocate out. So you can see our expenditures are under $5 million. We bring in over $18 million in cash. Our expenditures are a little over $4 million, just under $5 million. And we bring in $5 million to the general fund. And you can see that licensing is the largest portion of that. Recording is goodly sized. And depending upon the year, elections can be bigger or smaller than that. And we'll get to that in just a minute. So that $5 million is a portion of that $34 million that's charged basically for goods and services. And so over the years, the commissioners have worked very closely with the auditors on one very important topic. That's the amount that the state doesn't pay. And I'm focusing on this because this is one of those issues that's going to come back up again, and we're going to need everyone from the counties to assist us. You can see that the hatch marks are the amounts that the state doesn't pay. So the state doesn't pay in the even-numbered years. In 2016, it was $750,000. In 2014, it was just shy of $350,000. That's what the county is absorbing because the state isn't paying their fair share of election cost. So I don't believe it qualifies as an unfunded mandate. It's been around since time immemorial. We've tried that argument. But the Secretary of State's office has introduced this bill almost every single year, and occasionally it gets a little traction, but it hasn't made it yet. So in all likelihood, we will continue with that again. So the impact. We're going to reduce M&O by 14,000, almost 15,000. That one we can probably absorb, except we just got the notice after I turned this in. We just got the notice that there will be a postal increase of 1 penny per first class. We don't know what it means to our big bulk mailing that we do in elections. But even 0.2% could cost. So in licensing, we're probably looking at anywhere between $600 and $1,000 more that it's going to cost us for mailing back. For elections, we don't know yet because we don't know what the rate is going to be on our bulk mailing, which right now is 11.8 or 12 cents?
Between
9 and 11. So when we set out those ballot packets, we're not paying 49 cents. We're paying between 9 cents and 11 cents per ballot packet. And yes, that's just as cheap as you can get it, and we've done it. So we are going to eliminate a position in elections. That position right now is vacant, so we're not going to refill it. The problem with that is we could miss deadlines. We may not get all of the voters in on time. We may have to do some overtime to get them in. It's a risk. We're going to try to make it, but it is a risk. And that takes us down to, I believe, only 7 positions that are full-time permanent. So in elections, we operate on a lot of extra help folks. We have a pool of over 140 folks that come in part-time. Recording, we're going to eliminate a position. It won't necessarily lead to longer time standing in the lobby, but it's going to make it harder for us to complete all of our transactions on a timely basis, which is usually less than 24 hours. And as Mike mentioned in the Treasurer's office, they're trying to add more of the third-party submitters so that more documents come to us electronically. And the only way to get that done is the property sales need to go through REIT. We need those to go through the Treasurer's office electronically, so then the customers send those to us electronically. Otherwise, they're sending paper to the Treasurer's office, and they're not going to turn around and scan it in and send it electronically to us. It also means that our backscan project that we started saving money for in 1989 and finally got to backscan image all those documents in 2010, and it was going to take us another 10 years to finish all the indexing verification. That's going to get put on hold. So we were going back to dirt, 1889, and that's going to have to get put on hold until we have better economy and we can put that position back into place. So the ones that are really going to hurt is eliminating a position in vehicle licensing and eliminating a position in financial services. Vehicle licensing, we don't always have people standing in the lobby, but you should see all the things that we do in the back room. So we do most of the internets that are done, the renewals that are done on the internet. We do all the mail-ins. We take care of our sub-agents, and we take care of them very well because they're the ones handling the walk-in customers now. People used to come to us because it was cheaper to come see us than a sub-agent. Now the total dollar amount is the same, and so people have learned that it's easier to go to a sub-agent. But with their increased activity, they need more support than what they've had in the past. And it'll mean fewer audits, making sure that they're doing their jobs right. So that one is incredibly scary. If we have 2 people out sick right now, we're in deep trouble. That's how tight we are at the moment. Financial services, every year we barely make the deadline for getting the annual financial report in. This is one less position. Maybe we're going to make it, maybe we're not. So almost every single year we filed it on the last day that we can file it. It means compliance work isn't going to get done. And I'll tell you about the projects in just a minute, and I'm worried about those. So now we're going to get to our projects. Our projects are not small for the most part. They spread over years, and it takes a lot of planning and a lot of work with IT and a lot of work with other departments to make them happen. So first in elections, voter registration. The Secretary of State's office will be putting in a new statewide voter registration database, and we are an integral part of that project. So Mike will be devoting considerable time to that to make sure that it actually works well, not just for us, but for all the other counties. Because I have the joy of being sued frequently for elections. I win because we do a good job and we know what we're doing. So that's one of the things that we have to take into consideration. For tabulation, we recently replaced our equipment, but we will start a 5-year project, in all likelihood, with the Secretary of State's, all 39 counties and the Secretary of State, to look at replacing and standardizing tabulation equipment. So that one's not set in stone yet, but it's probably coming. In recording, we're now at 50% for our for documents coming into us electronically. When they come in electronically, it means we don't have to scan them. They're a lot faster turnaround, takes less staff time. We want to push that to over 60%. And like I said, Mike is working on that to get E-REIT really humming along so that we can push our percentage higher for electronic recording. And we are trying to work with our customers to get them to go to electronic recording. We push internet access to our customers. So instead of customers having to come in to recording into the main lobby, They can just go online, but they do have to subscribe because we want to know who they are. We're going to continue to push that out to more and more customers. This is something that the title companies and attorneys rely on heavily. These are the folks who really need that historical back scan finished. They do at times go all the way back to documents to 1889. So then we have licensing. So again, the new software has been a challenge, and we're playing a key role in identifying the problems, providing Department of Licensing with potential solutions. And again, this is going to take several years before that new software is more functional. We have our subagent responsibilities. We're going to continue, we need to continue to audit them to improve their accuracy and efficiency. And then the other thing that we're going to do, it's going to start before the end of the year, is that we're going to be sending out notices to those folks who do mail-in renewal, and we're going to ask them to move over to internet payments because internet payments are much faster for us to process. So customers here in Spokane are accustomed to sending their payment in on a Monday and getting their tabs no later than a Wednesday. With the loss of that position, we're going to have to add at least 1 to 2 more processing days for them getting their tabs back in the mail. And that will be tough for people because they've been trained. They know we have the fastest turnaround time basically in the state. And it's not going to be like that anymore. So, the biggie, financial services. Checking my time here. So, financial services. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board loves to put out new standards, some of which I don't necessarily agree with that they have much value, but we're required to follow them. They're significant changes in accounting and management practices. One of those items that they recently changed is how we account for leases, and that will be a major topic for the upcoming year with purchasing, the budget office, legal, about how we're going to address leases. Not because anything changed in the management world, but because something changed by GASB telling us we have to report it a certain way. And it's going to become so onerous that we may actually have to change our management purposes, our management processes in order to deal with the financial reporting. So we've also are going to be working on a new piece of software that we were able to purchase from savings from this year that should assist in the preparation of the annual financial report. So we hope to have that in place by December so that we can improve the flow and eliminate the paper in the preparation of the annual financial report. And that is going to carry over that concept to the rest of the county. So I have been working hard over the last many years to try to eliminate paper and go to electronic workflow. The county is finally at a point where I think we can pull it off. So already in payroll, and this will be also discussed at the department head meeting on Wednesday, we will no longer be printing paper pay advices. So everybody who is a regular county employee will sign into their PeopleSoft account and see their own pay advice and print it if they want it. So the hang-up for the last several years has been less than 100 county employees who, for whatever reason, cannot get onto the county computer system. And I've got to say, Tina Floberg in IT, bless her, finally found a way to get around this. So now departments will be able to print just those pay advices remotely and deliver them to the employee. So what does this mean? This means on payday that we will no longer have this huge flow of people going up to the Gardner Center building to get these stacks of paper to then take back to their departments and hand them out to everybody. So this isn't necessarily about saving dollar amounts. In that case, we're talking maybe 3 reams of paper. What we're talking about is time. We're talking about the time of county employees that will be spent doing something productive rather than picking up paper and handing it out. So that will be done by the end of the year. We're going to continue to push people towards electronic W-2s. Same thing. Go into your PeopleSoft account, print it. If we don't have to mail it, if we don't have to print it and mail it, that's saving somewhere between 50 and 75 cents for each W-2. So employees will have the opportunity to save some tax dollars also. And when my new chief deputy arrives, we're going to be working on eliminating paper in accounts payable and going to electronic workflow. So as we discussed with the pay advices, the amount of time that is spent by employees moving paper, physically taking things up to the Gardner Center building, physically coming to pick things up, costs us a lot of time and production. So that is something that we're going to be doing. So this isn't so much about what my office is going to save. This is about what the county as a whole is going to save. And the efficiencies and the time that departments are going to be able to claw back and actually work within their own departments. So this has been one of my pet peeves for years, and we're finally at a point where we're going to be able to do it. Lastly, for financial services, this is not a project we can do alone. Commissioner French, unfortunately, has lived this as nearly as long as I have, and Commissioner Cuney has been intimately involved in this discussion. And Commissioner Kearns, you're going to learn way more than you want to know about this. But Department of Retirement Systems, we are currently reporting monthly hours paid. We are supposed to be reporting monthly hours worked. None of our systems collect that information, whether it's Public Works, whether it's PeopleSoft, whether it's TimeSoft. We don't have any way to collect this information properly. And what this does is it moves hours into the wrong months for when people retire, and we literally have to go back with every retirement and reconstruct hours of work. This is a lot of man-hours in my payroll office. We have to keep these records for 60 years. This is a project that we've been trying to get done for many, many years, but it's a huge effort. It requires changing pay periods or pay dates. It has a huge impact on staff. Anywhere, I think it was $2 million was the last time we looked at it. So that is what we're looking at, and I would be happy to entertain questions.
Questions for Ms. Dalton?
Oh, come on, half an hour.
I will.
I've got one. Of the 140 part-time positions you have in the elections office, I correct me if I'm wrong, I assume those individuals are utilized during the actual election season. So I'd assume, I'm going to assume maybe 3 weeks prior to an election day and 3 weeks after, roughly?
Yes, most of the time it's 3 to 4 weeks prior to election day, and then 2 to 2.5 weeks after election day. It depends upon the size of the election. So obviously general elections usually require more. So out of that 140, probably only about 30 to 40 of those come in and work for most of that time period.
Okay.
So we have to have roughly 40 people on election night who go out and just close the drop boxes. That's required by law. We can't change that. We can't reduce it. 2 people per drop box. And we're going to end up with more drop boxes thanks to the bill that passed earlier this year. So probably 8 more. And it's going to take us a good year to get them all sited and installed. And in fact, we were supposed to have 9. One of them is Fairchild Air Force Base. They won't allow us to put it on there. And then another one is in an area that there's no public property. So we're going to have to negotiate with a private landowner to see if we can site one there.
Okay. What's your peak? So like which day has the most people volunteer, or I'm sorry, not volunteering, most people working, and how long are you at that peak level? So you mentioned 30 or 40 that are out in the field with the drop boxes. How many are back in the elections office doing tabulating, opening ballots? What's your overall peak number of people that are working of those 140?
As I'm waiting for Mike to get up here to the mic. Yeah, good luck. So just a reminder, anybody who touches a ballot, there are no volunteers. They are all
Yeah.
employees. They are screened and hired. They are trained. They are monitored, and if they
And
can't do
being
the job,
paid.
they're being paid, and if they can't do the job, they are terminated. So just so you know.
So election day is obviously the biggest day for most of those, because we do have the drop boxes, so that's 40 people and soon to be around 60. But we also have voter service centers here, and that's usually between 5 and 6 persons per each one of those. So that's another 30 people, you know, between 20 and 30 people that just to man those and do that on election day. Everything else, it depends on what the returns are working in the elections office for all the processing of ballots and that.
Okay.
So, I mean, you know, it changes because we have now probably 6 people are there processing the outgoing stuff for the, processing the ballots for this general election. And there are about a week to 2 weeks going there, and then starting on Monday, we'll have, you know, 20 to 30 people coming in to process all of those incoming ballots.
Okay, so it's several weeks then that you stay at that peak number then?
Right.
Okay.
I mean, because it's between $115,000 and $150,000 a year in extra help people that we spend.
Okay.
The largest is election day. It's not like we have the 40 and the 25. They're also on the other days that we're processing. So usually on the days we're processing, so 1 week before election, 25 to 40, depending upon the election. So probably 25 to 40. If it's a small election, we may not even have any at all. And that is one of the issues, by the way, with elections and with elections budget. Next year, I would love to be able to pull them out. They're volatile. They do this. The rest of my offices are pretty level. So we really need to separate elections out. Because if we have a year that's got 5 elections, which can happen with the presidential primary, our costs can go up. A presidential election, our cost goes up. Sometimes in the spring, we may only have 6,000 registered voters in a February election out of our 305,000.
Okay, so when you're maybe a week past election day, and you log on to your website and it says there's 500 ballots left to tabulate, how many people do you have in the office of those 140 that are working when you're down to that few ballots left to count?
I mean, if it gets down there, we will not have any extra help people, and we'll do it all in-house with the people we have that are able to do that. Because we have, I mean, because during that time, we're also frozen out of voter registration, so we can't do voter registration, can do that. But like in a general election, takes about 10 days after the election, and we're still in full swing because we'll process or duplicate up to 20,000 ballots. So it just depends on what the election is, what the voters do, with the size of the ballot, what's on the ballot. All of those things go into what the return rate is and what we have to do to process those ballots.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's really dependent upon what the election looks like.
Okay. Then on another area, in auto licensing, you mentioned that the vast majority of people are shifting over to one of the sort of 9 convenience locations that are around the county. Are you required by state law to offer them here, or can we push everything out to those sub-agents and just tell folks, we don't renew tabs here, go to one of the 9 convenient locations? Are you allowed to do that legally?
We would probably not be allowed to do that. That would probably be in violation of our contract. But we
Okay.
still need to be open to the public because we do the tough transactions. So we do the mobile homes because they are incredibly difficult. There is no mobile home transaction that takes 5 minutes. Mobile home transactions, we've seen many of them where the people have to come back 3 to 4 times because they not only need to see us, they need to see other departments. That is a transaction where we really have to hold the customer's hands all the way through the process, no matter What other departments may have to do some of the processing, we're still holding that customer's hand to get them through it. We still have a lot of people here in this area that walk in. But we also do a whole lot of backroom operation. As I said, we do the internets, and that can be, on a Monday morning, it's not unusual to have 700 of them printing first thing in the morning. The mail-ins, we can get anywhere from 200 to 600 of those a day, and those take a lot of staff processing. That takes us an entire day to get through those. We do a lot of dealerships. We do the difficult transactions, and we don't mind doing that, because if we're taking the transaction that takes the time, that means my sub-agents are out there being able to move people through fast, because the renewals, the easier transactions are going through them.
Mr. CUNY?
Come on, I still have six more minutes, man.
Well, and to follow up with that, you still are required to do the auditing of the sub-agents. So, so you still have to be there for that piece, as well as you take all the calls from the sub-agents as they have questions that come in. So there's still a very needed piece of the pie.
Yeah, no, and what I was saying was the actual, just for the individuals in the community that they just want to renew their tabs. Could you push that portion strictly to the sub-agents? You would still have to do the auditing of those sub-agents and providing the stocking and all the training, all that, but just the actual renewing of the tabs, if that portion could be
That
pushed
would-
off to the sub-agents.
We already have done that. We are one of the more successful counties in moving the number of renewals, walk-in renewals, from our office out to our sub-agents. We spent about a year after the fee change happened, and then a lot of our customers caught on very fast and are going to the sub-agents. But we still have to be open. It wouldn't reduce the number of staff I have or need by just
Well,
closing the doors
you mentioned
to the
that
public.
sometimes coming in, there's 700 that have been done online. Could those be pushed off to the sub-agents?
No, because there's a cost associated with that. So
Okay.
those are mailed out. So that's going to be 50 cents per, and so that would be another cost that the sub-agents would have to incur, and they would get nothing more for that.
Okay.
And it's actually faster for us to process them than it is for the subs. And again, I want the subs handling the person standing in front of them. That's a much better way to utilize our resources.
Okay.
And by the way, I have 9 really very good offices, so I give them kudos. They are an amazing bunch of people and great staff out there, along with all my staff here within the county. So we've got a lot of really good people. And keep in mind, since I took office in 1998, I've gone from 52 positions down to now it's going to be 38 positions. We've done a lot of innovation over the years, a lot of changes, too many to even try to go through. But we are getting to a point where we're just on the edge. Recording and licensing cannot take one more hit after this, and I'm still not sure we're going to survive this one. And financial services, it's always a juggle to try to get everything done. We're hurting.
Okay.
Yeah, come on, I got 3
I
and a half
know.
more minutes.
So it's the auditor in me, so I apologize, Tanya, but so looking at the proposed, kind of what the minimal, moderate, and severe, I noticed that based on what's in our binder versus what you had up there, Vicky, has changed. So you may want to get together and look at that.
Yeah, I think M&O got moved to
Moderate.
whatever the green color is, and that would have been,
Okay.
and that is fine. My fear was the postage increase, and unfortunately, the postage increase is coming.
Okay.
So
I
it
just
won't be
want
$14,000, but it's still going to be incredibly painful.
Okay, I just want to make sure what we see in the spreadsheet is what you want it to be from that perspective. And then just on financial services, I wanted to say that, that financial services worked hard to get the journal vouchers electronic. And so that was kind of the first piece to go electronic with regular accounts payable vouchers. And so that piece has happen. So it's paving the way to make that possible for financial services. So just want to give you credit.
Thank you. Yes, and we're looking forward to other departments also going electronic. So as Mike said, the treasurer's office. And then for a very long-term goal, I need to speak up for purchasing. So accounts payable and purchasing are really tied at the hip when it comes to those vendor payments, buying it, getting the invoice, paying the bills. And there's some really great ideas that purchasing has, but it is going to take some of that seed money. It's going to take software and some changes. And more importantly, with everything I was describing for financial services, this is a culture change for this organization. The software is easy. The process is easy. The culture change that paperless and electronic workflow are going to bring into this organization will be overwhelming and at times staggering for some of the people involved. Their jobs are going to change. Their responsibilities are going to change. We're going to be able to see where every transaction is at every moment, and we're going to know whose virtual desk it's sitting on getting dusty. So huge change in accountability, huge change in processing, and it just a humongous change in the culture of this organization. And I just want everybody to be aware of that and realize this is not going to be simple or easy, but it's necessary. But I do thank you for your time, because having been here for a while, I do believe this is the first time ever that I, as an elected official responsible for 4 departments, have actually gotten to talk about what we do. And with 4 departments, I could have spent all afternoon, but I'm being nice to you.
Next year.
Next year.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Now we're going to recess for a short break of about 15 minutes. So we will reconvene at 2:45, and I think our next presentation will be the Parks Department. Very good. So we'll reconvene for 15 minutes.